up a hell of a fight, but wasn't until 2016 that a cold case unit asked for DNA. Analysis of her fingernail clippings were collected from her in the autopsy in 2004, and she had scratched her killer. Bruising that was all over her body was also thought that the teenager had been abducted by Kwai because he wanted to test out a sex chair invention he had created. Kwai called it a sex pod, and he had a 4-page manual about it, along with crude sketches of what it looked like. And all of that was found in his apartment. Basically, the sex pod was a seat. It was a tripod stool with leg straps, and there were hand grips to pull the legs up and down, and it was designed to restrain sex partners. It was portable, but sturdy enough to hold a 200-pound person during sex, and from every account that I read about this, the person sitting on the seat was most likely not a consensual party. Sarebia had ligature marks on her ankles and wrists, and that matched the texture of the sex pod, but her actual cause of death was said to be asphyxiation by neck compression. Kwai had strangled her to death, so when the DNA results of the skin under her fingernails came back, the capture of Kwai was easy. This is because he was serving time for another armed robbery that when he committed in 2014 and in 2016, as soon as Kwai was released from the Florida prison, there were 2 New York detectives there waiting for him outside. They read him as his rights and arrested him again for the much more serious charge of murdering Sarebia. Kwai was immediately extradited back to New York to stand trial for her murder and his arraignment. He refused to be fingerprinted, and he refused to go before the judge in the courtroom, and although he was in handcuffs and shackles, it took 12 officers to hoist him off the floor and carry him into the courtroom by his arms and legs. And of course, Kwai filed a lawsuit for personal injury against the cops who forced him into the courtroom because he felt this necessary and just wanted to cause a lot of drama. Kwai's trial didn't wrap up for Sarebia's death until 2018. 14 years after her murder, Kwai was charged with second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to the maximum of 25 years to life. He pleaded with the court, and he said he was an innocent man who was being framed. some sources say that he was actually bisexual, so I'm not going to stipulate which one is true, but he was an aspiring web designer, and he went by the name of Rashawn Brazell. He was in his home that morning, and he was getting ready for an appointment that he had to meet his accountant. And after his appointment with his accountant, he would take the subway into Manhattan for a Valentine lunch date with his mum. Unfortunately, this was a date Rashawn wouldn't keep, and it was about 7:30 a.m. when the buzzard of Rashawn's Gates Avenue apartment door would ring, and he opened the door to a male caller. The two men would then walk off towards the Gates Avenue subway station, and witnesses would later say that the two men exited the subway at Nostrand Avenue station. Would be the very last time Rashawn would be seen alive, when he failed to show up for their Valentine lunch date, and then he didn't come home later that day. Rashawn's mum filed a missing persons report with the Brooklyn police, and 4 days later 2 bags with parts that belonged to the body of a black male were discovered by metro station workers. In those bags were arms and legs of what appeared to be a young black male 6 days later. A torso would be found at a city recycling centre, and the fingerprints tested from the initial bags found in the subway belonged to that of Rashawn. Rashawn's head has never been found. Initially, police were thinking that the transit worker must have turned killer. How else could the bags appear in the subway tracks like that without somebody seeing who put them in there? It had to be a worker, because the bags were also undetected for days, and that's kind of what they thought. As the case went cold, 11 years, investigators were confused as to who could have killed Rashawn. But when the cold case detectives pulled up Sarebia's case and got working on it, they learned Sarebia and Rashawn lived in the same neighbourhood. The dismemberment and disposal of their bodies were also very similar. When detectives also discovered that the DNA under Sarebia's fingernails was white, before letting on that they knew he killed her, the detectives went to the Florida prison to question him about her murder, and while they were talking about her, they asked why about Rashawn's murder. Coy then claimed he was a Jehovah's Witness. He then replied he knew of Rashawn because they were neighbours, but claimed he would never associate himself with Rashawn because he was gay, and that was an abomination according to the Bible. His religion would not permit him to associate with anyone gay, but then Coy described him and Rashawn as being cousins, although they was not blood related. Rashawn's murder was traced back to a man who was already in prison in the Caribbean, and his name is Vernon Primus. Vernon's arrest for Chanel motivated the cold case detectives to open the other two cold cases, which were that of Sarebia and Rashawn. They realised that the only similarity in Chanel's case to the other two was that Chanel was also shot into a bag, but she was not dismembered. And that's when they started to look at the evidence and the old DNA they had and why they ran the nail clippings, which led to Quay remembering a little bit ago when I told you Quay thought literally giving his fingerprints overwhelmingly to officers into the court. He must have had an idea that he left some kind of fingerprints on the bags or something that contained somewhat of Rashawn's body parts, and the fingerprints matched is what led to Quay to another trial for Rashawn's murder at the arrangement for Rashawn's murder. When Rashawn's mother walked into the courtroom, Quay started to blow kisses at her, and he even mouthed the words, "You know I love you, and if this was meant